Jennifer Walsh, is suing funeral home director Alexander Carter in the amount of $4,820.88. She says the staff desecrated her mother's remains, and she now wants her father's body removed from the cemetery as well. Mr. Carter claims he compensated the family for his staff's error, and the plaintiff is just making life difficult.
This is an unfortunate situation, Ms. Walsh, and I am so sorry for your loss.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Carter, you are the owner or the director of the funeral home?
I'm the owner, Your Honor.
You're the owner. And there was an issue regarding your mom.
Yes, Your Honor, I am suing the defendant for $4,820 to cover the cost of moving my father's body to another funeral home.
Right. Your father is already at this particular cemetery.
Yes, Your Honor, he died 2 years ago.
Right.
Unfortunately, 6 months ago, my mother also passed. And we came to Mr. Carter because we'd already been with his services before. My mother had expressed a desire to be cremated. We came to Mr. Carter and explained that we had somewhat of an unusual situation. My mother, in the time that my father passed, gained an extraordinary amount of weight. She was over 500 pounds when she passed. And we came to have her cremated with Mr. Carter's services, let him know the exact situation.
Situation in terms of
that she is a woman of size.
The amount of weight that she had on her body.
Right. It would be an unusual situation. I understand that not all crematoriums are able to handle this. So I spoke to Mr. Carter about this.
I want to pause you there for one moment. Mr. Carter, when you were made aware that her mother had that sort of weight on her person, did you have any concerns about that?
Your Honor, I did not have a lot of concerns.
You had experience before with people
Yes, I did have some
that size
experience
weight?
during my course of being in this business.
Okay.
And I didn't think, unfortunately, accidents happen.
Right.
I truly apologize
And
for
and no one's disputing that there was an accident. We're going
Yes.
to get to that. What was the experience like dealing with Mr. Carter's business with your father?
With my father, it was as easy as something as traumatic as that can be.
Given the drama behind
Absolutely.
the loss.
It's not
It
an
was
easy...
seamless, would you say?
Right. It was not an easy situation, but we trusted Mr. Carter and his business. That first transaction went through seamlessly.
And I would take it because it was so smooth, there was a certain amount of ease on you and your family's part because you said, okay, well, we didn't have any problem the first time. It shouldn't be an issue.
That's not the only reason we returned to Mr. Carter's
What was
services.
the other reason?
My mother expressed again and again and again that she wished to not only be cremated, but then have her ashes buried alongside my father in his grave. So naturally, I came to Mr. Carter, explained the situation, and explained that my mother's ashes needed to be buried with my father, which is part of the service that I paid for, and he agreed to it.
Let me go back to Mr. Carter. Do you recall that conversation, sir?
I do recall that conversation.
And what was your understanding in terms of what was being requested by the Walsh family?
Your Honor, I basically was 100% for it.
And it wasn't anything that you probably hadn't done before, right?
That's correct.
And so it sounds pretty simple.
Yes.
You already have one spouse there, and your father was not cremated.
My father was not cremated, no.
So
he
he's in a
chose to be
traditional
buried.
casket in
Correct.
a plot.
That's correct.
Correct.
And how does that process work? Do you then exhume that and then put the ashes in, or explain to me what you do there?
We basically up to Mrs. Walsh's
My father,
consideration.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. My mother expressed that her desire would be for the casket to be reopened. She would be buried inside the casket with him. She expressed again and again.
Meaning her remains would be buried.
Right, her ashes would be buried in the casket
And is
with
that
my
something
father.
that you would do? You would open up the casket, put the remains in, and then seal it again?
Well, it's kind of an odd request, but as
But
long
he
as...
did not say no.
But no, but
He took
in
the
regard...
money.
Exactly. I requested the services, I paid for the services, and he was willing to refund the amount that was paid for my mother's cremation that ended disastrously. And while I appreciate
Then
that...
you know what, since we're talking about it, then let's deal with exactly what happened to your mom. Go ahead.
Unfortunately, there was a terrible accident. I still have a difficult time talking about it. I'm
I
sorry.
understand. Take your time.
Because my mother was a woman of size, the equipment malfunctioned, and there was a huge fire. We were not able to properly recover her ashes. The ashes that we do have, no one knows if it's a combination of hers, the building, the equipment. There's no saying what I've actually got in my possession. All I know is I have
Your Honor, may I interject?
something.
Well, let her finish the thought, because
Okay.
this is not something that
I
is
understand. I
easy
understand.
to
What we are
discuss.
trying to do is find the best amount of closure we can. After losing both parents, after having such a traumatic experience with the cremation, all I want is to put this to a close.
Coming up on America's Court.
What I'm asking for is the service that I came to Mr. Carter for, which was not only to have my mother's body cremated, but then to have her body put in with the casket with my father's body to rest for eternity.
And later,
I consider myself more of a wiener connoisseur, if you will. I procured one of this man's wieners
At
and
11
measured
inches.
it with a ruler.
And so you're suing him because he didn't give you the full 12 inches?
We had 2 hot dogs, the Bigfoot regular and the Bigfoot long.
That this was no 12-inch wiener. It was far shorter.
Can't you just give him a little coupon for 3 hot dogs?
this is America's Court with Judge Ross. We're back with the case of Jennifer Walsh, who is suing Alexander Carter for professional negligence.
When we talk about remains, there were remains of her mother.
There were the ashes, the
There were
remains of the
ashes
ashes.
that were in the facility, but we don't know,
If there was also a combination of
are these
the
human
caskets,
ashes? Are
yes.
these ashes from the burning and the
That's
fire
correct.
from the walls and the equipment?
Unfortunately, that's correct.
Well, how were you able to collect the ashes?
He wasn't, he was, I will admit, he was apologetic, but what he presented to me was the amount of ashes he believed should have come out of a cremation from a woman that size, and he was unable to confirm how much of that actually came from my mother. I have no idea what it is that I'm trying to bury with my father. I just want to put this.
You don't know if it's just soot or
I really
paper.
don't.
Sadly,
There's-
I do not have any access to medical examiners or anything that will tell me what the ashes, whether it's remains or.
It was an
anything else.
accident. We know that.
Yes,
We know that they were entitled to their money back.
which I have.
You gave them their money back.
That's correct.
That's not enough for you.
What I'm asking for is the service that I came to Mr. Carter for, which was not only to have my mother's body cremated, but then to have her body put in with the casket with my father's body to rest for eternity.
Well, if all you have is what they were able to give you,
Right.
why wouldn't you then take that and still open your father's casket, you know?
I cannot go back to this facility to visit my family over and over and over again to be reminded of this tragedy. I need, for my peace of mind, I need my father's body to be moved so that when I go to visit my
You
parents.
want to move your dad's body. You
Yes,
want
Your
to
Honor.
move your dad's body completely from his establishment.
That's correct.
And take it somewhere else.
Yes, I would like to be able to visit my father in peace at another another cemetery,
Yes, in the cemetery.
and to be able to have a fresh start, not to be looking at the building that still to this day has damage. If I were to go to visit my father, I have to see the charred remains of the building from my mother's accident. That's not something I want to
And this
ever have to relive.
$4,820.88 is the cost that the other establishment is
Yes,
charging you.
Your Honor, I am not
to take the
asking-
body, rebury it, and put your mother's ashes in.
Correct.
And you're saying you shouldn't pay that because
Not only I shouldn't pay, but I really cannot pay. I'm in the
you
red. with
cannot
the-
pay because
I'm in the red.
when I look and see the coordination, the authorization fee, the transportation services, the licenses that are involved, and just that whole process of having to get family members together, go there, it's all very traumatic. And when you talk about pain and suffering and making people whole, that's the cost of doing business, sir. You will find a way
Yeah.
to cover this cost. That is your judgment, ma'am.
Thank
Case
you, Your
closed.
Honor.
All rise.
Judge Ross has ruled in favor of the plaintiff. The defendant is ordered to pay $4,820.88.
Now that I have the money, I will find a peaceful place for both my parents.
I'm sorry for everything, but I believe I paid enough.
The remark that I made is that the world would be taken over by Asians and that they would rename our club the Pandas.